and welcome to Just One More Watch. Welcome today to my review of the Aerotech Sea Hunt, a brand new retro inspired dive watch launching on Kickstarter tomorrow, the 7th of October. Now, full disclosure, this video is sponsored by Aerotech. They're delighted for me to be able to show it to all of you prior to the launch of their Kickstarter campaign. You can have a good look at it and decide whether or not you want to jump on board, take advantage of the early bird specials. Those early bird specials start at $399 Australian dollars. Rather unusually, this is a Malaysian-Australian co-production. The fact that our Aussie dollar is in the dirt at the moment means the exchange rates are very favourable if you are purchasing one of these from overseas. 399 Aussie is equivalent to about 220 quid or 265 US dollars at the moment. And for that price, you're getting a chunky but funky little dive watch. 500 metres of water resistance, Fume dials, and one of the cutest case backs I've seen in ages. Let's flip the camera and have a look at it. Alright, let's start as we often do with a quick look at the Kickstarter campaign. As I said, launching tomorrow, 7th of October at 8 AM Pacific time. 399 Aussie dollars for the early bird specials. They come on a leather strap. So I've got two different leather straps, two different types of stitching to show you. I've also got the optional bracelet. I would definitely recommend optioning the bracelet. It's kind of hard to dive on a leather strap. The bracelet is 55 Aussie dollars. That is 37 US dollars on top. So you can't accuse them of gouging in terms of prices. Three different dials to choose from. There's a blue, kind of brushed fade dial. There's a burgundy one, and there is a meteorite dial. I've got the blue and the meteorite. Now, meteorite's 150 Aussie dollars on top. That's 550 Aussie. That's less than 400 US. I think that is the cheapest meteorite dial that I have encountered thus far. I will obviously leave a link to this campaign in the description of the video. Also, I'm not the first person to review these. Aaron Dunlap, amongst others, got their hands on these a few months ago. I'll leave a link to Aaron's video up in the top right corner of the screen. So, chunky but funky then, 40 millimeters in diameter. I measure it at 15.5 mil thick, 48 mil lug tip to lug tip, 20 millimeter lug width, tapering down to 18, back up to 20 at the clasp. Now this one on the bracelet, sized up for me, weighs in at 175 grams. So that is a fair amount of heft from a 40 mil watch. The head of the watch is 100 grams. It weighs 115 if you opt for the leather, but 175 on the bracelet. 316L stainless steel throughout, case, crown, case back, bezel and bracelet. I'll show you the case back. There's a little sneak peek. I did say it was quite an interesting one. Full stainless steel bracelet with solid links, solid end links. Now, it is only a press clasp here. However, they have already prevented that moan and niggle by assuring me that they're upgrading to a milled clasp on the full production version, which is just as well because I am allergic to press clasps. Case finish is simple, but I do like it. It's brushed, but it almost looks bead blasted. There is not a polished surface anywhere on the watch. I much prefer brushed surfaces. I think if you're going to beat a watch, if you're going to keep it long term, then brushed surfaces look much better for much longer than polished. So just vertical brushing on the side, radial brush on those lugs, and a very nicely machined bezel and crown. Kind of semi-guarded crown there, nice and easy to grip as well. Now the bezel insert is ceramic, not fully loomed, but it does have a loomed pip up there at 12 where you would expect it to be. 120 click unidirectional rotating. This is a prototype, obviously. The bezel action is alright, if unspectacular, but you know, perfectly decent for a $300 watch, as is that piece of sapphire. 500 meters, 50 atmospheres of water resistance on this one. That is a piece of 3.3 millimeter thick double domed sapphire crystal with anti-reflective undercoating. Not sure how much anti-reflective coating, as you can see. Hi, that's me in the background there and my camera. Not sure how much anti-reflective coating they managed to squeeze on this prototype. I do hope they manage a little bit more for production models, but you don't get 50 atmospheres, 500 meters of water resistance without a solid piece of sapphire crystal on there. 3.3 mil, I reckon this one should do the job nicely. And there is a helium escape valve opposite the crown at the 9 o'clock position. The supplied bracelet is certainly alright for your 37 US dollars. 3-link Oyster, pretty standard. You've seen one of these before, I have no doubt. Rather unusual, they have taken the step of printing Aerotech on that mid-link, and it is the protruding mid-link, so it's only a 40, but it does wear slightly larger than that. Just push pins, not screw links, and as noted, they're going to upgrade that clasp. Fold over with security pushers, and again the Aerotech logo, just a basic clasp here. Now, as mentioned, the bracelet is an option. The leather strap is what you get as standard, and it's a nice leather strap, I must say. Kind of bonded on the edges here. I think you'd be okay getting this one wet with the occasional splash, but I wouldn't take it swimming or diving. Genuine leather, quick release. It's got that vintage cross-stitching at the top, and it's stamped with the Aerotech logo at the back. All brushed, again in keeping with the rest of the watch, and Aerotech etched there. This one has done the rounds, as I mentioned, so this strap has got a bit more use in it than I would normally have on a review watch, but it's wearing very well. Good quality, this one, nice graining to it as well. Now, zoomed in on the dial, I'll pop in some macro here as well for you. Kind of standard layout, triangle at 12, batons at 3 and 9. Date integrated nicely down there at 6 o'clock. Always looks much cleaner and much more symmetrical, I think, rather than sticking the date window at 3. There's a little truncated baton down there at 6 to cope with that date window. Circular applied indices everywhere else. The Aerotech logo, the stylized A underneath the triangle at 12. Just 50 ATM printed above the 6. Rather unusually, I think perhaps why they have added the word Aerotech onto the bracelet link is because it doesn't have any branding on the dial. I don't necessarily mind that though. Handset, you've got a kind of Ghost Mercedes hour hand with a sword minute hand. Vintage style second hand there with a tiny red tip. I think the overall look of the dial is quite attractive. It looks almost atomic style. I think with that elongated semi-Mercedes hour hand and the Aerotech logo, the fade, the vertical brush, it's got a bit of a 1950s kind of Star Trek original series look to it, which I think works quite well in this blue dial and also in the burgundy dial, which is an option. Now, the handset on this prototype is a little bit rough around the edges. That will be appearing in the Moans and Niggles section later on. There's also a kind of lateral brushing on those, again complementing the brushing all over the case and that vertical brush running the length of the dial. And here's a quick look at the Meteorite one. The dial layout, etc. is unchanged. The hands and indices though are rose gold rather than silver as they are on the kind of brush dial blue and burgundy models. You've also got a brushed effect on the hands, but it is in rose gold as discussed. Check that case back though. I did say it was a cutie, and isn't it just? One of the classic diving watch tropes, the diver's helmet there, with a little piece of sapphire as a viewing aperture just where the piece of glass in the diver's helmet would be. And they have included the ubiquitous spec sheet, but they've done it very nicely there. Aerotech 9015 advertising the Miyota 9015. It's an automatic stainless steel and 50 atmospheres of water resistance as well. It looks very good. Definitely one of the top 5 case backs that I've seen on the channel. And I love the way that they've added those screw down case back holes there all the way around. It looks great. So Miyota 9015, 24 joule hacking and hand winding, 4 Hz, high beat, 28,800 vibrations per hour, automatic, roughly 40 hour power reserve, running here plus 7 seconds per day with a slightly low amplitude but a nice minimal beat error. They're very attractive movements. It's almost a shame there isn't more of an aperture at the back, but I guess they couldn't manage 50 atmospheres of water resistance with more of a display case back. Hence the tiny little window of sapphire. I do like these movements. They really are the entry-level high beat automatic. One word of warning though is that they wind unidirectionally, so you do have a discernible rotor wobble and you can hear the rotor spinning long after you have stopped moving your arm. So do beware of that if you purchase this or anything else with a Miyota 9000 series in the back of it. Now the lume on these is C3 Superluminova. As I said, these are prototypes. There's plenty on the hands here. They will work on adding more to the indices and to that lume pip at 12 o'clock. It's not bad in its current format on these prototypes, so if they're going to improve upon the lume, it should be pretty much up to standard by the time they're finished the production units. And there it is sitting on top of my 7-inch wrist. Please forgive the glare coming from that piece of domed sapphire. I must say I do quite like the looks of this one. As I said,
kind of vintage. It's got that atomic thing happening. The dial really makes this one for me. Kind of fades from blue to black, as you can see there. Still nice and legible though, and chunky. 15mm thick, a little bit of that is the protruding caseback though, so it actually wears quite well, carries its weight well, but it is quite hefty. So perhaps if you are a guy with slightly smaller wrists who is inclined to 40mm but wants something with a bit of weight to it, this one might do the trick for you. And that's it zoomed out a little further for perspective. Nice and legible, just what you want from a dive watch. Outside there's certainly no glint and glare from all of those brushed surfaces, but you see what I mean, there is a bit of a bounce back from the domed sapphire crystal. That's it on wrist, sits nicely on the leather strap. Obviously you don't quite get the practicality that you get from a bracelet, but it is a nice high quality leather strap. And there we are, that is the Meteorite dialed version on the leather strap. As discussed, it is a nice high quality leather strap, nice graining, decent stitching, good hardware, can't really complain, and I think it suits the overall vintage aesthetic of the watch. Moans and niggles then, what am I going to complain about? Well, the Meteorite doesn't work for me at all really. It may be the cheapest Meteorite dial watch that I have reviewed on the channel to date, but I would be steering you towards either of the alternatives. I just don't think that kind of modern material works well with the vintage look of the watch. I think that the fade dial, the burgundy and blue, really suit the overall design. I'm not so keen on this Meteorite one, I'm afraid. And there's probably a reason that I haven't seen too many companies put the brand name on that mid-link of the end-link before. It's because it looks a little bit weird, frankly. And I mentioned it when I showed you the hands on the blue dial version earlier on, a little bit rough around the edges. Now I appreciate these are prototypes, but I would hope that Aerotech would take the QC up a notch with their production units. Some of the chapter ring bezel alignment very much like it came out of a Malaysian Seiko factory, if you know what I mean. So what's the take-home message? What is the conclusion from our look at these two prototypes today? Well, a number of positives. I do like the design. I think that one looks great with the blue dial. I'd imagine the burgundy one would be really different. You don't see an awful lot of red dial dive watches. That would be an interesting and slightly left field choice for one's collection. 399 Aussie dollars, they're not gouging with the price either. Even if you do go for the leather strap, there's a stretch goal they're going to throw in a NATO at some point as well, but 15.5mm might be a little bit thick for a NATO. The Meteorite dial doesn't do it for me, I'm afraid, but if you are up for a cheap Meteorite dial, then 150 Aussie dollars on top certainly makes it the cheapest one that I've reviewed on the channel to date. Thanks for watching, see you in the next one.